Тут люди знають, що таке безпека і як її досягти, і знають, що безпека – це разом з Україною.
Wir werden in unserer Unterstützung für die Ukraine nicht nachlassen. Wir stehen weiter fest an der Seite der Ukrainerinnen und Ukrainer.
Okay, I'm slowly starting with the introductory remarks, not to lose more time, and hope you can grab a headset. I want to welcome you to this session panel, EU-Ukraine session panel. With Russia's large-scale invasion in Ukraine since February 2022, the EU member states have decided not only to support Ukraine financially and militarily, but also to open the enlargement package. Ukraine applied for EU membership in February 2022 and was granted a candidate status in June 2022. In December 2023, the EU leaders decided to open accession negotiation. I think this has consequences for both the EU and Ukraine. The EU needs to get ready for a big country like Ukraine and will have to reform some of its internal structures. Ukraine will have to fulfill in wartime conditions to move forward with the accession process. At the same time, the EU accession is a crucial element for the reconstruction of Ukraine, providing the basis for rule of law, administrative and judicial reforms. Strengthening anti-corruption institutions is an important element of the reforms Ukraine is working on. It can become a powerful driver for the reconstruction of Ukraine. So the interlink between EU accession and reconstruction, I think, is an important element also for this conference, but it's also the more important element for the next years. I'm very happy to moderate here this high-level panel, which will discuss the preparation of Ukraine's EU accession. We want to discuss the progress made in EU-Ukraine relations, the extensive reforms Ukraine has made, and the next step required advanced accession process. I'm really very honored to introduce to you this great panel. To my right, we have Ola Stefanishina, who is Deputy Prime Minister for European and Euro-Atlantic integration of Ukraine. Warm welcome. To my left, we have Kaja Kallas, the Prime Minister of Estonia. Great pleasure. Then we have Ingrida Šimonytė, the Prime Minister of Lithuania. Pleasure is on my side. We have Maroš Šefčovič, the Executive Vice President of the European Commission, responsible for European Green Deal and Vice President for Interinstitutional Relations. Warm welcome to you. We have Luminița Teodora Odobiescu, the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Romania. And finally, Anna Löhrmann, who is Minister of State for Europe and Climate at the German Federal Foreign Office. We have a first round of around 5 minutes introductory remarks. Then I will have a follow-up question, and then I really hope to open up also for your questions that we can interact with each other. And I would really like to ask the panel to stick to the 5 minutes in the introductory remarks. I would like to start with Deputy Prime Minister Stefanishina, with Ola, and want to ask you, where does Ukraine stand in the EU integration process, and where are the main challenges and what are the next steps? So where are we now?
Thank you so much. And first and foremost, I think it's also a very decisive moment that shortly after the European election and ahead of forming of the European Commission, we have a very strong set of decisions to be taken and very serious amount of commitments the new European Commission should build on. As always, what I've been saying, Ukraine is there with a strong commitment, strong stand, and strong prioritization relating to European process and European integration of Ukraine. We have, and you've heard it today in the speech of the President von der Leyen, completed all the necessary political steps, and we have invested a lot of efforts to build the domestic capacity to address the reform agenda, but also to prioritize the EU process. So we are here to lead the country with the reform agenda related to EU accession, and we are looking forward for the new European Commission also to prioritize the enlargement process, but also to build on a very serious amount of decisions taken in the military sphere, in the area of defense policy. And I think this is the new set of priorities we could work on, at the same time making sure that we are capable to become part of a EU market and part of the European family, but also we are working on building the European defense pillar, which is vital for Ukraine.
Just as a quick follow-up question, where do you see the main challenges also now in the next year? How you want to manage also to do at the same time integration, and I think we are really in a very difficult war situation now also. I think also it's very important to have this reconstruction conference here, but I think there are really other needs Ukraine also has at the moment. So where do you see the main challenges with regard to the integration at this?
Well, I think we're at the very decisive month of this year in terms of the military situation, but also in terms of commitments in financial and military support to Ukraine. Just in a couple of days, we're going to have the G7 leaders meeting, where we will see a hopefully decision which will secure stable financial support to Ukraine. And just in 1 month, we're going to have the NATO summit, where we would expect allies would secure the commitment in terms of the military support, which will allow us to build on the security commitments. So in terms of stability and predictability of military and financial support, I think we're going to be in a good shape, and that will only help us to concentrate on the domestic reform agenda. And as I've said, EU will continue to be a driver of it. Just before the end of the year, Ukraine will prepare and present the huge roadmap of strategic transformations in the area of rule of law and public administration, which will be a precondition for a fundamental transformations in Ukraine for the next decades before the accession process. But the key challenge for us is the dynamics of the accession process itself, because the group of the enlargement countries is rather big. But Ukraine's capacity is really strong, and we really need to keep the country running and busy with this reforms agenda. So we really need to make sure that the accession process and discussions, they really catch up with the capabilities of Ukraine, and they're really strong. And our parliament is willing and desiring to pass the legislation. Government is willing and desiring to develop the policies, but for that we need to ensure the proper dynamics at the side of European Commission. And I hope it will work with the new Commission and based on the very good experiences we had over the years before.
And what do you expect from the Commission? So what is on their side from your opinion?
We've been in a pretty good shape with around 1,000 people engaged in the accession process of Ukraine so far. We are already very much integrated into EU single market. We have a customs liberalization, we have energy integration, we have a very integrated energy markets. We have been investing our digital capacities into EU policies, and we have been rebuilding the bilateral dialogue with our neighboring countries in a spirit of future accession to European Union. So based on that, it's very important to us that the same dynamics will be preserved, that we will not be delaying in starting the accession process further. And we're working hard also with the upcoming Polish presidency to start the dynamic accession process. But at the same time, I think a part of the accession process, there are much more challenging tasks ahead of the European Commission, which are of a very strategic interest to us, to Ukraine. First and foremost, it's developing of or revealing the defense industrial potential of the European Union, and we are very much inspired by the very fact that this Commission has enabled to put the strategy as a proposal, and I think that this is the area where European Commission could build on and really strengthen the European defense pillar, and it's very important for us at this point of time.
Prime Minister Kallas, Baltic states are really a unique example of EU integration. I think there are a lot of experiences from which Ukraine also could learn. So where do you see also the role of your country in this accession process?
Well, we are a good example of EU integration. I mean, 4 years before we joined the European Union, our GDP per capita was 36% of the European average. When we joined, it was already 48%, and now it's over 80%, which shows that, you know, European Union is a real convergence machine. Of course, what we have said to our Ukrainian friends, it's not really negotiation, because you have to fulfill all the criteria that is asked from you. It's not like you are going to negotiate on the terms. You really have to do everything. And I've also emphasized that nobody gives any kind of discount on these requirements. But it is also necessary for Ukraine itself, because our example is that when you do, for example, the rule of law reforms, then the investors actually trust your economy, because they know if something goes wrong, they can turn to the legal system and get help from there. And that builds the trust in the economic system, and that brings also prosperity to the economy, what we want. This is, I mean, Europe is an unfinished project, so every country brings something to the board, and of course there are always the fears related to the enlargement. And you know, former Portuguese Prime Minister, who was at the time when they joined, was the Minister of Internal Affairs, said that when they joined, it was a big fear in the European Union of this Portuguese plumber who is going to come and take everybody's jobs. And now when we joined, then it was the Polish plumber that is coming and taking everybody's jobs. And now it is the Ukrainians who are coming and taking everybody's jobs. And I was just in the parliament yesterday, and the opposition was really attacking me on Ukraine. And you know, you can, of course, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that, you know, if you are literally fighting for your country, and when this country is free, you want to be there to build up that country and not to leave that country, because there are so many opportunities in Ukraine then when the war is over, when that you don't have these opportunities anywhere else. So I think we have to address these fears, but it's also in the interest of us, not only Ukraine, but also in the interest of us, that Ukraine does better, Ukraine is prospering, and they don't need that much support, but they can be part of the single market and actually doing very well.
Can I have a follow-up question? Is the EU ready for this integration? So where do you see the EU at this point? Because I think that's one of the other challenges.
Of course, this is always the question that, you know, are we ready on our side? What I say, European Union, the project of European Union is never ready. It's constantly changing. And of course, we have to adopt and think what we have to do on our side, on for example, the decision-making process, if we are bigger, all these concerns that are there, we have to address them. But I think we can do this in parallel, because I think it's not fair towards those countries who want to join European Union when they have fulfilled all the criteria, and then we say that, oh, oops, we are not ready. I mean, this is not fair, because that was not the promise. And what I want to emphasize here is, of course, when we talk about decision-making processes, then coming from a country that didn't have a voice for 50 years, then now that we have a voice around that table means so much to us that you know, we can't agree to any kind of arrangements where this voice is taken from us because we are small.
Thank you. Prime Minister Šimanytė, I think what we can also as Germany maybe learn from the Baltic states is how to understand really Russia, right? Yeah, in a way. And I think also this whole question of how to defend also Europe from the Russian aggression. So I want to ask you, how do you see this interconnection between reconstruction and security, also with regard to Ukraine? I think we also have here a defense panel, I think, which is very good. It's really important to interlink this also. So I want to ask you about this interlink between security and reconstruction.
Well, I think You know, in so many cases in 2022, we've heard this remark that you've been right along the way. But of course, this is nothing to be happy about. Only our problem is that we are at this war now. And this is to a large extent to mistakes or miscalculations that were made in the past. Because in so many cases, what was most problematic and what we were strongly advising our friends and allies and partners against is imposing our own rationale on Putin, thinking that something does not make sense because it does not make sense to us. It does not make sense to us because we have opposition to face, free media to face, election to face, legal system, we can be challenged in the courts, and this is everything that Russia has nothing to do with. And we had to see it already in 2007, 2008, when the invasion in Sakartvelo started, in Georgia. So I think all those things were piling on each other. And what we were also missing, this risk of building dependencies on Russia, like in the energy sector, that was turned as a weapon against European Union at a very dire point. So we are all lucky that we managed to find solutions and to go around this. And that Putin was not able at the end of the day to blackmail European Union with energy blackmail, but he was definitely counting on this because he was planning that all along the way. So I think of course, many things happened that Putin was not calculating will happen. He was still counting that we will be hesitating and not ready to take solutions, that Finland and Sweden will not be ready to join NATO, and it happened in a very short time period, that NATO will sort of get to grips and start thinking anew about the real defense, and the fact that, for example, Germany announced the permanently stationed brigade in Lithuania is something of that sort, very important, huge change for Germany, but also huge change for NATO and huge change for how we see the deterrence and what is the most important. And now I think what is important is to stick to our messages and to stick to our understanding that this is unfortunately for a long time, because I see little rationale in thinking that maybe Putin will change his mind. He is ready for a long-term confrontation with NATO. He needs that for his internal politics. Now when he put all the economy on a military track, it is very complicated for him even to step back, because it most probably will mean something of a Soviet Union collapse type of 1989. Because all of a sudden it will appear that you produce things that nobody needs, and it might implicate all sorts of political problems, so he will not risk it. So he will definitely push for more confrontation, and for us this means that we have to take our security seriously, like Baltic states and countries on the eastern flank are doing for quite a while already, being at the level of NATO defense spending and above. We need to get serious about our defense industry, something that is a very positive development that we are speaking about this, and many projects are happening. Unfortunately, not in the past, but at least now. We need to cherish our relations with like-minded countries around the globe, not only transatlantic bond, but also countries in Indo-Pacific. Because there are not so many democracies, unfortunately, or the number is not increasing. So we need to sustain what we have. We need to be united, and we need not to be naive. I mean, we have absolutely no right to look for simple solutions. There are no simple solutions, unfortunately.
But are we ready for this? I think again, I ask you again because I think this is I think the argument I hear from the Baltic states, I heard from several other EU member states. But I think we are not ready. This is my impression, and how to move us in this direction, really to support Ukraine in the way it really needs to be supported.
Well, I'm sorry, I will answer with question. Do we have any other options? But being ready. I mean, we have to be ready, and we've proved so many in so many cases along the way that every time we draw a red line for ourselves that we are not going to do this, and I'm not talking about the Baltic states, because we might be perceived as very blunt and maybe sometimes radical, and other words were used in the past that we know, and I will not repeat them. And then we are doing what we've said a couple of months ago we will not be doing, because Bucha happened, because something happened, and we are changing our mind, we are moving, but we are losing time, and Ukraine is losing people. So I mean, this is not about money. This is not about, you know, some nominal theoretical debate. This is about real people dying every day. So, I mean, we as people living in liberal democracy, we as people coming from Christian background, Europe comes from Christian background, I don't think we have any other option but to stand by Ukraine as long as victory takes.
Thank you. Vice President Šefčovič, energy and critical raw material will play an important role in the relations with Ukraine. So where do you see the potential also in this integration process of economic relations, energy relations with Ukraine? I think it's also important in terms of investment, in terms of really integrating in these sectors, but also benefiting, both sides benefiting from this.
Well, thank you very much also for your question. First and foremost, I would like to say that I agree with everything which was said by the ladies on the panel, and I would like to once again express my admiration to Olha for her enormous work and for the fact and the memory I carry with myself since the moment when we, as a whole college, visited Kiev. It was the full-scale war. We got stark reminder that we are going really to the war zone because we got our helmets, bulletproof vests, and nevertheless, the whole day we've been discussing European integration with the whole government, including with President Zelensky. So for me, it was such a commitment that you are actually having the war raging, you know, maybe 1,000 kilometers to the east, and at the same time you spend the whole day talking to your colleagues from the European Union how to get better prepared for the European integration. What needs to be done, going through the checklist, going through, you know, the very important integration step, and it's very admirable. And as by coincidence, I think we very much welcome Anna to the club of the new member states. But we went through this negotiation and accession process, so I know what kind of arduous process this is to kind of work on a key, to transpose it in our national legal order, and to, deliver on all these issues. But what you have said, this is clearly win-win solution. I think we are the best witnesses that how much this is profitable for the both sides. And Ukraine, of course, is the big country with enormous potential. And I think in the world we are living in currently, it's very clear that the size matters. And I think to have our new partners from Ukraine, from Moldova, from Western Balkans would be a huge contribution to the European project, to the European integration, but also to the strengthening of the European political and economic weight on the global scale. And coming to your question, if it comes to energy, if it comes to critical raw materials, there is huge potential, and at the same time, I would say there is enormous challenge. What we have to do, I would say now, between now and the winter. Yesterday, we spent the whole afternoon and the evening talking to our Ukrainian friends from energy sector, and it's quite clear that the Russian bombardment on the energy infrastructure is already bringing enormous challenges for the Ukrainian government, for the Ukrainian energy operators, and of course it might become even more difficult by the winter. So clear call for the air defense, which I think was the topic in the morning, and I think all the leaders who've been intervening on this clearly reflected the priorities. But if you allow, I would just make two additional comments in this regard as a result of yesterday's consultations we had. First and foremost, we have to work together as Europeans, and I know that I have here my colleagues from DGNR, from ENSOI. We need to find the ways how we can get more electricity into Ukraine. We just simply need to use the full capacity of the interconnectors. Technically, it's feasible. It costs a little bit of money, but we need to do it because this is a reliable source to get the electricity from the EU to Ukraine. Ukraine was supplying us electricity until it was technically possible. Second, I would say very important thing, I mean, when we are talking about investment into the future, I think Ukraine can benefit enormously if we would help them to build so-called decentralized energy network, because it's much more expensive to destroy the wind turbine or photovoltaic field than, of course, the big energy power plants. And this is exactly what we need to do also in the future in Europe, microgrids and using, I would say, these new modern technologies which then can supply you clean energy and are very difficult and very costly to destroy. And then I think what is also very important, we have to talk to our financial industry, to international financial organization, how to make it easier and smoother for operators, also from Ukraine, from the EU, to actually bring this investment and the funding into the energy infrastructure. And I'm very glad that EIB stepped in the direction. I know the EBRD is ready to do more, but we need simply to help the Ukrainian operators to kind of maintain the infrastructure, increase the capacity, and improve the interconnection capacity. And on the critical raw materials, to put it in a simple terms, everything what we need in Europe from the perspective of critical raw materials, Ukraine has. And big parts of these deposits are actually in the western part of Ukraine, and I meet a lot of companies who would like to go there. They just need to de-risk the investment. They just need simply some encouragement to do that. And I think this is, I would say, one of our tasks. How can we create a conducive environment that investments would go there? Good example, and that's my last point, is that the Ukrainian gas storage, even today under these very difficult circumstances, already serves as a strategic asset for European energy security. The companies on commercial basis are storing gas in the Ukrainian gas storage. It's close to European border. It operates in very professional terms, and it's biggest one in Europe. So clearly, I mean, it has a huge potential now for the gas, later on, I'm sure, for the hydrogen economy. So the mutual advantages are clearly there, and we should definitely highlight that the enlargement would be absolute win-win for both sides.
Thank you very much, and thank you also for targeting to the short-term needs for Ukraine. I think this is very important. But can I ask you, where do you see the Ukrainian energy system in long term? Where is this transforming? Where it is moving? And where do you see the role of the EU and integration with the EU on this?
I think, of course, I mean, now we have to focus on this summer and this winter, and I was kind of reflecting upon that. In the long run, I think that Ukraine has all preconditions to have extremely favorable energy mix from the perspective of tackling the climate change. I mean, the potential for having huge photovoltaic parks, to have the wind energy could really transform the Ukraine into very important green energy source and production of the green and low carbon hydrogen, which we are lacking so much in the European Union. And as I said, it was extremely impressive that even in the wartime, Ukraine was able to supply Europe with electricity. So clearly the potential is enormous. And now we are, of course, going through the preparatory phase, and I hope that very soon we would officially open the accession negotiations. And I'm sure, knowing from the professionalism and very constructive attitude from the Ukrainian partners, we will be, of course, helping Ukraine to develop the strategies and the roadmaps that the energy mix would clearly fit with what we want to achieve together, and this is climate neutral future, because I think in that we clearly share the same goal. So I see the Ukraine from this perspective as very important contributors of the green, low carbon, clean energy for the economy, but also for the European Union.
Thank you very much. I would like to move to the Romanian Foreign Minister, Mr. Dupescu. Black Sea is a lifeline for Ukrainian economy. It's really important for Ukraine to have this free opportunity for export. At the same time, I think Romania was very important also through the Danube River, also to support grain export. So where do you, as Romania, where do you see your role also in supporting Ukraine in the EU integration process? I think Black Sea is very crucial here.
Yes, it is It is true because the reality is, unfortunately, the war is in the Black Sea. And when we think and discuss about the Black Sea, we have two keywords, security and connectivity. The two keywords for Ukraine, but not only for Ukraine, for us as well, for Republic of Moldova and other countries. It's always very easy to speak after the prime ministers of Estonia and Lithuania, after the vice president, because we share the same view. We know how important it is to be member of the EU, to be member of the NATO. Since the beginning of the war, Romania has strongly supported Ukraine in all possible and meaningful way, not only in the military field, but also security, and especially discussing about the Black Sea in the connectivity field. And connectivity because this is linked with the security. It's linked because we are now helping practically Ukraine through the solidarity lanes to export, and 37 millions of cereals transited Romania through the solidarity lanes. It's more than 70% of your exports of cereals, with investments from our side, important one, but with very important results for Ukraine. So connectivity is key and really important because it's part of the security now. It's part of your accessions to the EU because practically it helps in the integration in the single market, but it's also important for the reconstructions. And I just want to give you some recent examples because we have worked and we have now a master plan for road together with Ukraine and Republic of Moldova, because when we are discussing about our region, we also have to take into consideration Republic of Moldova. It's a matter of geopolitical reality and economic practicality, and this is why we have this coordination with Ukraine and Republic of Moldova, working together to strengthen the connectivity, either in the infrastructure, digital, energy as well, and this is really important. So we invested a lot, but we invested also for the future, and it's linked with the reconstruction as well. We have, as I said, a master plan for the road. We are working for rail and naval transport as well. We are now investing in building the bridge, a new bridge over the Tisa River. We will open a new cross-border points, and practically 10 years ago, the biggest railway transshipment terminal in Europe with Romanian private investment was opened in the northeast of Romania at the border with Ukraine. This is really important. Practically, we use the Danube 24 hours a day, 7 days. 650 ships are transited per month. And Constanța became the biggest hub for Ukraine. And we are protecting Ukrainian ship through our national water. So this is really important because it is a connection between what we are doing now to support Ukraine in real terms. It's part of the accession negotiation because we help integrating through connectivity in the internal market, and this could be used and should be used in the reconstruction process. So, and we will continue to support Ukraine because this is really important for all of us. Their security is our security is your security. And Black Sea really plays a really important role, and we will work to ensure connectivity. We will work together to support Ukraine. And maybe on the energy side, because we have seen what Russia continues to do, attacking civilians and civilian infrastructure, energy infrastructure. Ukraine is not alone. Each time Romania stepped in providing with electricity. And I'm really proud about my citizens and local authorities because each time we have seen massive attack on the civilians, we have discovered that fact the local authorities have provided with generators, small generators, with huge quantity for hospital, just ready to step in and to support. So this is really important then to show that you are not alone, and we will stay next to you until the final victory. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Also looking to the time, I'm moving to Anna Löhmann and want to ask also about Germany's role in the integration, where Germany sees its own role in supporting and moving Ukraine forward, and maybe also where are the main challenges also, and where Germany also would help to overcome these challenges.
Yeah, thank you very much indeed. The Ukrainian future lies in the European Union, and we, as Federal Republic of Germany, strongly support Ukraine in achieving these aspirations. And for me, it's very clear that this pathway to the European Union is not only a pathway of some sort of ticking boxes of accession negotiation. It's really about fulfilling the aspirations of the Ukrainian people, the hope for a life in peace, in freedom, in prosperity. And this is the hope that this process of European integration gives. We have, and I'm deeply impressed, I've also been working closely with Olga now for a few years actually, and I'm so impressed by your personal commitment, but also by the commitment of other policymakers in Ukraine, by the Ukrainian people, to really go this way under these really difficult circumstances with a full-scale war of aggression going on. But I think it's so important to really stand by your side here. The next step is the opening of accession negotiations. The Commission has actually now, and thank you for that, Maros, on the 7th of June, stated very clearly that the conditions are ripe. So I think it's our duty now as member states to really give green light and to really open these accession negotiations this month. And we, as Germany, are doing all we can to support this process, to also convince each and every member state to be behind this process, and we'll do our very best. We are also supporting, of course, Ukraine in implementing the reform commitments, such as rule of law, and particularly in the area of rule of law. I just want to emphasize this again. The rule of law is really a lot of what this is about, because the rule of law is the opposite of the rule of force that is advocated by Russia. And it's also something that is not only important to protect human dignity and our values, which alone would be enough, but it's also critical for what all this conference is about, for economic development and for economic recovery. We need clarity that investments are secure, that a judicial system is free from corruption, to really rebuild Ukraine. And we are fully committed to doing that. We're giving technical advice, and I'm very, very confident that together we will take the next step on the way towards the EU this month.
So do you expect that there will be an opening of the sessions? Yeah. Okay, that's what?
Yes.
Yeah. What do you think about stage the session? Is this an option for Ukraine?
Well, I think indeed the objective of Ukraine is to move closer to the EU and to move closer to the EU as fast as possible. So I think if we find interim steps of integrating, for instance, in certain areas also of rule of law dialogue, of also meetings of council formats, of maybe programs such as Erasmus, of really sort of getting benefits from that are normally reserved for EU members already on the way of EU integration, sort of in a step-by-step process. I think that's an excellent idea, and we need to pursue that. Also, the Commission has been working a bit in this regard. What we clearly should not do is to create some sort of a second-class membership or this kind of thing. But I think everything that brings Ukraine closer to the EU and us closer together is much welcome.
Well, thank you very much. Would you like to react maybe to some of the points which have been made? If not, it's fine. I could follow up. And I will also slowly open, but I just want to give it also back to you.
Yeah, thank you so much. First and foremost, I feel so much warmth and energy in our panel among everybody who has been standing with us since minute one of the full-scale engagement, but also who have been behind the decision to grant Ukraine a candidate status and make it happen. And it's like all of us and many others who have brought us to this stage, and we wouldn't be even dreaming of having a discussion about opening the accession talks and all the miracles which have been happening on the way, with the decision on candidate status, with the decision on starting the accession talks, and prime ministers have been doing the great job behind the scenes to make it to make it work, and everybody who have been with us at every step of the way. Throughout all of this process, I had only one fear threatening our commitment, is the very fact that we didn't have necessary air defense and we didn't have missiles to protect our cities, and this is the thing that really feels the threat, because people do not know whether their families are secure, they do not know whether they're able to continue what they do. So we will do every reform needed. We will ensure that the integration is done throughout the accession process. We are already largely integrated in EU market, and Luminita has just confirmed it by the examples. But please make sure that Ukrainian sky is safe enough to make sure that we are capable to deliver on our promises.
Thank you very much. So we have 25 minutes left. I would like to open it already now. There are microphones also in the back. I would do 1 or 2 rounds. Yeah, there's a first question here. And maybe introduce yourself also quickly. And I collect questions and then give it back to the panel.
Чути мене? Всім доброго дня.
Good afternoon. I am Ivan Ponkin. I am president of the Agricultural Consultancy Services in Ukraine. My speech is to Olha and to all of the panelists. In fact, Ukraine makes steps to ensure access for the rural citizens to have access to successful practices. But under the conditions of the war, Ukraine would not be able to meet all of the needs of rural residents. So what can other governments do to support Ukraine in implementing that in life? It is about 15 to 17 million of Ukrainians who live in rural areas and who do need this support in entrepreneurship, in smaller farms, in cooperation, in development of markets and craft products. I would be thankful for your response. Thank you.
You stand up when you talk.
Thank you. My name is Magnus Liljeström. I work for the Swedish Association of Local Authorities and Regions. This is the first conference where there is a local dimension on the aspect of recovery in Ukraine. And I would like to add that there is a local dimension also on the accession to the EU for Ukraine. This is both in a negotiation where it's important to have the local perspective on the promises that Ukraine gives. It is clearly in the national legislation process where it's important that the voice of local governments is heard to avoid over-implementation, etc. And of course, local governments need capacity building and resources to be able to adapt to the EU acquis. So this is not a question more than, are you aware?
Please, there to the left.
Thanks a lot. My name is Olena Pavlenko. I'm from Ukraine. I'm representing think tank Dixie Group. My question would be to Mr. Shevchevich on critical raw materials. So Ukraine is a strategic partner for the EU on critical raw materials, but don't you think that we should develop not just an export capacity of Ukraine of the raw materials, but rather to build the value chains in Ukraine? And if yes, what would be the vision of the EU on Ukraine's perspective? Thank you.
Can still, okay, to the right.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah, it's working. It's working.
Yeah. Irina Solonenko from the Center for Liberal Modernity. I have two questions. Whoever can react. First question, there has been a lot of enthusiasm at the panel. This is really great. But I wonder if we move forward with accession negotiations. Can we hear? Yes?
Yes.
There will be some problems like with agriculture. And so what are the solutions? What is the thinking on this now? Long derogation periods? Or what is the Ukraine approach to this? And the second question, we all understand that rule of law is really fundamental also for recovery, for construction process. And there has been an idea of kind of developing action plans for the chapters 23 and 24 before closing benchmarks will be formulated. I wonder how much we're still on track with this idea, because I think it would be very important for Ukraine to really have very clear benchmarks when it comes to rule of law, judiciary, fighting corruption, and so on. Thank you.
There was another question. There was another question.
Dear dignitaries, dear participants, thank you for the presentations. I'm Anna Isichko, Center for Democracy and Rule of Law, Ukraine, Kyiv. I wanted to draw your attention to the issues of the related reforms, media reform. It's one of the underestimated reforms in Ukraine. It took us almost 10 years to get there where we are, and there should be a process of implementation of acquis communautaire, of adoption of necessary legislation here as well. But what I wanted to say is that if we are not supporting media these days in their desire to cover all the processes that are going on in Ukraine, we won't be reaching the aim of extreme raised awareness to what's happening actually. So the EU accession is not possible without a proper and sustainable support for independent media in Ukraine that covers the countering propaganda, countering fakes, and countering IPSA. So maybe something could be done at the level of this URC, because media reform and media agenda is at all out of this URC. Thank you for it. It's not kind of a question, but if any of speakers could just mention what can be done behind the URC 2024, that would be great. Thank you.
Thank you. I take three more questions, please.
Hello, my name is Maria Yasenovska. I am representative of European Disability Forum, and my question is regarding persons with disability and how their interests and rights including in the accession process, and for example in that reforms of rule of law you mentioned, and maybe representatives of other countries could reflect somehow how you use the accession process for your countries and for respect of the rights of the person with disabilities. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Daniel. I am representative of the Roma community and Roma International Women Fund Chirikli. And first of all, I want to say thank you to Ms. Olga for the making of the Forum of the National Minorities. And I wanted to point out the importance of the national minorities and specifically Roma community, just because with so many minorities that Ukraine covers, it is really important that, to also show and to also work with Roma, who unfortunately most of the cases stays in the shadow. And I want to address it to the whole public and community here. And basically, it's not like a question, but more like a call for cooperation and for help to develop more the Roma community in Ukraine, just because thousands of Roma people are fighting for Ukraine and helping in different ways, rather providing into the economic section or in the developing art of and culture. Yes, and I would really like to discuss that in the future and how we can build and develop that, since it's one of important aspects into the entering the EU, the improvement of national minorities. So yeah, we're looking forward. Thank you.
Okay, I would take one question, short question. Okay.
Yeah. Hello, my name is Tobias Münchmeyer. I'm representing Greenpeace. I believe part of the EU dimension is also the Ukraine facility. And I have one question to the representative of the European Commission, Commissioner Šefčovič. As you know, in the Council decision on the Ukraine facility, there was given a very, very important role to public participation and civil society participation. Also thanks to the support of the European Parliament, that has been a very important part of this decision. Now we see that the disbursement has started. 6 billion, 5 or 6 billion have been already disbursed, but so far there's no mechanism, there's no structure how the civil society could be consulted for especially Pillar 2 disbursements. And I was wondering what the thoughts of the Commission are in this regard. Thank you.
I would give it back to the panel and start maybe in the reversed order. Would you start? You can also have a final statement if you want, but I think there were quite a lot of questions and also very concrete questions.
Indeed, yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, indeed, I will start with the questions on the EU accession process that were raised. First, indeed, there are several issues along the way where also the EU has to get ready for accession, right? And this getting ready for accession has three dimensions. It has first a governance dimension that Mrs. Callas mentioned here earlier, the question of how do we actually make sure that an EU of 35 or members actually has the capacity to act, and how do we make sure that sometimes issues that are a detour now or that can be solved by somebody having a cup of coffee somewhere, that they don't put us into a dead end, right? So this is really something I think that needs to be at the heart of the discussion of how the EU can get ready. Second, we need to talk about policies such as agriculture that you mentioned. I mean, Ukraine, last time I checked, doesn't want to access the EU because of EU's agricultural subsidies, but rather because of EU's commitment to freedom, to the rule of law and the community of values. Therefore, we need to find a solution of how we deal with agricultural policies in the future to be sure that it's both fair for Ukrainian farmers as well as for EU farmers, that also we don't create a lot of resistance within EU farmers, so there's a discussion there. This also applies to cohesion policy and several other policies that we need to discuss about. Thirdly, we need to discuss about the budget, of course, and I think already now, as we're getting ready for the next financial framework, this needs to be enlargement ready, so already now we need to start those discussions. What does that actually mean? And finally, fourth point maybe, we need to talk about values. So how do we make sure that our instruments to protect the rule of law are not only sharp during the accession process, but also afterwards. So also there, we need to talk about reforms. And I think during the accession process, you already highlighted the chapters pertaining to the rule of law is called the sort of fundamentals. And therefore, of course, we put particular emphasis here, but also I think after accession, we need to make sure that rule of law is protected. And then finally, maybe just one sentence, one more sentence to one other question on the disinformation point, because I think that's really critical. I mean, media in general, media freedom. So how does the government also of Ukraine ensure media freedom, media plurality? That's one issue. But the other issue in this regard is how do we actually make sure the citizens really have a right to credible information, actually, right? And that we combat disinformation. I think you can talk much better than I can from the Lithuanian example, because I think you're much more advanced here on what we can do to combat disinformation, actually. But we have, and I just want to highlight that in the General Affairs Council, we have presented a statement supported by 16 or so member states where we put combating disinformation center stage, both for EU member states as well as for accession countries, so also applying to Ukraine, and thinking a lot and asking also the next Commission to work a lot on concrete tools of how we can collaborate better in this field, because I think that is critical to win also this war of disinformation.
How to counter disinformation. For Mr. Odebesco, I would give you the word.
Well, very important question, and they remember me about our accession negotiation, because we went through similar processes, and we had the same question. What is important is on one side for the government, Ukrainian government, to listen and to involve the local authorities and NGOs and media in the whole process, of course. And what we can do is to share from our experience. We went through as I said, through similar processes, and we had the same question, and we, as authorities, and I was involved in our accession negotiation from the very beginning. I was a junior diplomat when our negotiations started, and I went through all the negotiations. And this is really important, to share experience, and we are here to help and to support. And this is what we are doing. We are working with Olga, with Ukrainian government, sharing from our experience, including on minorities, and we had very good results together, exchange of information, not only information but also legislation. Look at our legislation, exchange of good practices. Of course, as my German colleague said, we had to go also through the EU to different processes to adapt ourselves. But our opinion is that enlargement and institutional reform to adapt to enlargement should go in parallel. This is really important. And why is so important also to act now with the formal opening of the negotiation, with organizing the intergovernment conference? Because this is an important message for the Ukrainians, and it's not a gift. They work. They did a lot of reforms. And it's rewarding the work under very, very difficult circumstances. We are speaking about a war. I've been 3 times to Kiev. I've seen what's there. For those who are not believing what we are saying, just go to see. So we invite them to go to see. So it's really it's important. And this also the right signal we send to Putin. True, and it's also a question of credibility for the EU. So this is why all those here supporting formally opening of the negotiation and organizing the intergovernment conference in history, and we have to take the right decision, and this is the right decision for Ukraine. But looking again at all the points you raised, we are ready again to share from our experience with positive and negative things, because we went through similar, so difficult sometimes reforms as well, and we will continue because also in the EU we continue with the reforms. And maybe a last point on disinformation. This is a serious issue for all of us, not only for Ukraine. Disinformation, hybrid attacks, hybrid threats, fake news, they are happening now, and we have to stay together and to work supporting the free media, so educating also the people with the help of media as well. And this is the field where, of course, we're looking at the next commission where we have to do more. But and we are ready to do more with Ukraine and for us as well. Thank you.
Thank you. There were several questions also.
Thank you very much, and I'll try to be very telegraphic because I know that time is pressing on. The first bunch of the question I would like put together the question linked with taking better care of the people with disabilities, proper treatment of minorities with a specific focus on Roma community, better participation of the civil society into the decision-making process raised by the Greenpeace and the gentleman who actually opened the question session on the involvement of rural areas into the overall strategic thinking. So these are, of course, all the aspects which are very important for the for the European Union, and of course for all that you need gradually to establish the systems, the processes, and we all respect and we fully understand how difficult it is to negotiate and work on the integration into the EU, and at the same time to defend your country, to defend the Ukraine. But I think that once the accession talks are open, clearly the discussion about how to use the social fund in the future, how to transpose all the pieces of legislation like Disability Acts, Media Freedom Act, and all the other elements which are so crucial for covering all the areas you've been highlighting. This clearly will be on the table, and I would link these examples with how the accession negotiations actually look like. I mean, to put it in simple terms, you have acquis communautaire. It means the European law. It's a pretty hefty book. Olha now knows very well, and you have to transpose it into your legal order. And what is actually being negotiated is how long will it take you? I would say there's several chapters. So it means what would be the transition period, and how much we as the EU can help you with the financial support. And of course, each country is different, each chapter is different, and we would need to find a specific approach, as Anna said, gradually, step by step, to actually help the Ukraine to get to the level of the respect of the whole European legal framework in the same way as it is in the European Union. And of course, the point presented by Olena on the critical raw materials, I think that's the European way. We just do not want to extract, take it away, leave the mess behind us and close the door. That's not the way how we do the business in the European Union. We clearly want to work very closely with Ukraine to develop your natural resources, to make as much value as possible in Ukraine, because it would be very soon the EU. So we are actually working and investing in our economy security in this regard. So we are not talking about the opening of the mine, but also processing, refining, and of course recycling of all this, I would say, mineral resources. A little bit of an advertisement. We open the process of working on the list of the projects which should be getting the seal of the strategic European projects which we want to finalize. I mean, the first batch by the end of this year, to work on permitting, to work on funding of this project, so we may sure that we would be kind of progressing as fast as possible. And of course, this applies also to Ukrainian partners. And the last point on local dimension, you're absolutely right, and probably we've been participating together in the first ever summit of the local authorities in a COP in Dubai. So you are the player, you are the actor, and clearly we know that this transition, especially tackling the climate change, cannot happen with the local municipalities, because you are responsible for transport, you are responsible for housing, you are responsible for permitting, and we just simply must have you on board, and that of course applies here as well. But we shouldn't forget that even though we are talking about the integration of Ukraine into the EU, still this is happening under heavy war, under daily bombardments, and we just have to respect that this is a very, very challenging process. Thank you.
Thank you. Prime Minister Šimunite.
Well, many things have been said so far, so I will not be repeating what was said, because it's a lucky coincidence that on the panel there are so many people who went through the process not so long ago. So I think we can share a lot from our experience. Of course, now the situation is much more complicated, given that not only Ukraine is at full-scale war and is defending its territorial integrity and sovereignty, but also the reality that we have is different from the end of 20th century when we were doing the same thing, because now it's so much easy to spread fake news, to challenge the reforms that government is undertaking, to lie about the benefits of and costs of the reforms and membership in EU or in NATO or wherever. So I think we need to be mindful that we are working in a different informational space, different environment. So we must be very vigilant that our strength, and one of our strengths is freedom of speech and free media, would not be turned against us. And I think this is not a problem of Ukraine, this is a problem of all the democratic world, because on so many occasions we've learned that we are so easily manipulated, being that COVID or what other challenges that might be at stake internally in the country, being that spike of inflation, for example, where you would be accused of bad policies, of sanctioning Russia and whatnot, but not Russia, who is guilty for everything what happened in energy market and food market first instance. So I think we need to be very vigilant that we will be operating in a different environment, but I guess I can speak for all the members of the panel. We are more than ready to provide Ukraine with all the support that is needed. One prerequisite, I think, that we all need to sort of stick to is that enlargement is not a risk, but it is an opportunity. And we had this debate about what risks enlargement entails on previous occasions. I remember Brussels Economic Forum 20 years ago discussing that there will be a collapse of European economy because of new member state joining, that the Polish plumber, but more generally, delocation of businesses and everything. Now we see none of that happened. Actually, EU became stronger after each and every enlargement. What is very important, that what we can see is the gray zones around the EU. There should be no gray zones. We should take care of it, because if it's a gray zone, then it means that somebody will come to that area and we know his name. So I think we should do everything to avoid this. And this is the main prerequisite. This is in the benefit of EU and EU member states to speed up with enlargement. Of course, we need to assess countries merit-based, not pack unrelated questions in a evaluation, to have fair process of evaluation, strict but fair, and then I think we can succeed. Now I wanted to pick up on those issues related to people with disabilities or national minorities and those topics. Of course, it's much easier to write something in a law, and everything what is needed will be written in a law. But I must say that it is a constant work, that being within the EU for 20 years, we still continue to improve the reality for people with disabilities, for national minorities, for people who have particular needs and that we need to provide them and respect their dignity. So I think this is not something that will stop with the accession negotiations. We need to be mindful of that, because European Union is also challenged. It's challenged through crisis. We had financial crisis. We had COVID. We had many new reality situations where we had to act. We had, of course, war in Ukraine was something completely unprecedented. So, but I think what is specific and astonishing and very good about the EU, that after each and every crisis, EU, as a matter of fact, becomes stronger. So I think this is what is our unique capacity, unique feature, and we should stick to this. Thank you.
Thank you. So no grey zones. Prime Minister Kallas.
Yes, I will just pick one question, and that is the rule of law, and not really focus on the bureaucratic side of it, which is, you have to do these reforms, but rather the societal side of it. I mean, from our experience, when we were occupied by Russia, then Soviet regime actually normalized corruption. It was okay to steal from the state because the state was the occupiers, not ours, but the occupiers. So you were sort of undermining the regime when you were stealing from the state. I mean, people were very creative in stealing from the regime. When you ever come to Estonia, we even have a museum dedicated how creative people were. But what I want to say that when we got our freedom back, then it's required the whole mindset change from the whole society. It's not okay to steal from the state anymore because the state is ours, not theirs. It's ours. It's our taxpayers' money. And Ukraine didn't do it in 1991 when we got our freedom back. And I really feel that in Ukraine there is this opportunity window now because Ukrainians are literally fighting for their country. So the taxpayers' money goes there, and it's not okay to steal from the state. So it requires the mindset change from every local municipality, from every person who is thinking of gaining from some processes. I'm not doing this because it goes, it has to go to the place where it was designed to go, and that also brings prosperity back to the local communities, to the local people, and this is extremely important to work on that mindset change, and that of course requires media support as well. Not only to what media does very often is to say that everybody's corrupt, and if you have a corruption case, then play it so big that this is usual practice, but actually support in getting rid of corruption really so that people understand that it's not okay to steal from the state.
Thank you. Very important point is mindset change. Please, Ola, you have the last word.
Well, thank you so much. Yeah, you hear me?
Yeah, we hear you.
Yeah, probably one thing that to complete all the messages. For us, for Ukrainians, European integration is the existential process. And it is the obligation before Ukrainian people, Ukrainian armed forces who stand for Ukraine. And this is more important than any obligations before European Commission, than any reform where we should find the consensus politically between ourselves. It's just the instruments, but the obligation lies within the faces of 90% of Ukrainians supporting it. And that's why no task is too complicated, no challenge is not to be overcome, and no decision not to be taken. And I'm absolutely happy to know that we have so many people understanding that in European Commission, in European Council, in the leadership of European countries. So we are fully on the same page here. And whenever we're standing in front of the next existential decisions, we know what is at stake, and no challenge, no barrier, even if it's a veto, threat of the veto from one state, is sufficient enough not to overcome it. And the longer we're in this position, in the understanding, the more invictable we become. That gives a lot of strength to us, but also it gives so many important signals to every Ukrainian person. Every decision taken to bring us closer to European Union says that we have done our job, that civil society helped us to move to that the armed forces still here, that the victory is there, and the after victory Ukraine becomes a member of European Union. It's not enough to say it once. We have to continue saying it. We have to continue confirming it, but with everything we do. So nothing is complicated enough not to deliver, not to make the decision happen. And speaking of the reforms, we already have felt the importance and the crucial power of these reforms related to EU. If we wouldn't have the visa liberalization and the reforms related to that, we will not be able to say to our people that they are granted temporary protection, that the borders are opened in the morning of 24th of February. We will not be able to have the electricity in this country if we would not cut ourselves out of Belarus and Russian electricity grid and not to become part of the electricity market. It would not be possible without 10 years of reforms made in this area. It would not be possible to be in many, many places with the solidarity lanes, with the Black Sea corridor, with all the connectivity decisions and the trade liberalization. So we know how it makes it possible to survive when you do the background work. So European integration is the religion, is the hope, and it's the future, and nothing is complicated too much for that. So thank you so much for being here and sharing so many messages of support to us.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I would like to thank the panel for this discussion, and would invite you also to again allow the whole panel, please. Thanks a lot.